Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. When D-Machine first came out, I was sent a clip by Movin and Chaz that blew me away. There was a strange giant that they had spotted moving through the map, and it only seemed to appear at high rounds. In the first video I made about it, I was only able to see the monster from quite a long way away, and today that all changes. I've been sent loads of stuff from people in the community that gives us a much better view of what the monster looks like, and I've also done some digging myself and discovered some stuff that I think is absolutely insane and tells us not only about the future of this monster, but also potentially reveals its identity. It's gonna be an exciting video, guys, so gently caress that like button. Let's begin with the intel that directly tells us about this monster. These come from a mystery soul who is trapped in the dark ether. We don't, at the time of recording this, know their identity. It might be Piotr or Peter, or it could be someone else entirely. We just don't know yet. But at first, their messages are completely jumbled. They actually just don't make any sense at all. Then, in time and with some perseverance, that changes, and we hear messages like Day 95, trying hard to keep track of how long I've been here, strange fractured land, food and water isn't easy to find. And we learn that they're going to try and build a transmitter. They successfully do this and begin to catalog the events that they see in this strange fractured land, which is the dark ether, by the way. And on day 1646, we get the key pertinent message which says, saw something new today, something big, tall as building, walking through fog, difficult to see details. Kept my distance as it passed, but I heard talk from others that giants roam this land, which I dismissed as madness. Heard one of them call them elder gods. I thought I cataloged all the creatures here in their pecking order, but I was wrong. That's a message that I had already covered in my first video about this. What I hadn't covered is some of the later messages, which say that the longer this mystery character is trapped in the dark ether, the fewer creatures pursue them. They're still taking down newcomers, these creatures, but this particular individual, this stranger in the dark ether, is ignored. However, more powerful creatures seem to have taken notice of them. And in the opinion of the stranger, that might be because the monsters finally see this person as a threat. They have been eating zombies and plague hounds after all, so you can understand why these godlike monsters might be a little bit more cautious about what was going on with that weird stranger in their home. The stranger's experience in the dark ether continues on a lot longer than the messages I've mentioned here. At day 6000, they discover the perk machines, and at day 13,773, they are still creating messages. Their story is one that I'll be exploring in future videos, but for now, what they've told us about the elder gods is all we need. So we know that these giants known as elder gods have some kind of higher brain function than a regular zombie, or presumably at least, because they're taking notice of this stranger. They recognize him and they know to stay away from him, but are keeping a close eye on him. They're described as being worse than any nightmare, and so with that in mind, we should probably take a closer look now and see just how bad that nightmare is. Our first clip comes from Phantom and Intense, and as you can see, while they're out of the map on round 46, the monster comes strolling by, and what I didn't realize in my first video is that it actually knocks down trees as it walks, which is so unbelievably cool. I had no idea of this, but the trees just fall like matchsticks as it plods through them. It's such an incredible detail for Treyarch to have added. The Elder God is pretty damn hard to see here though, because it's nighttime in the dark ether, or it's dark ether time, and so I've got clips from Isakui and Senpai Sadboy-san, who both managed to catch the creature in the light. Here it's a lot easier to make out its features, I think. You've got its massive club-like hand on the left, you've got its claw on the right, which is the same as the claw in the door Easter egg that gives you a free legendary weapon, which we'll talk about in a sec, and you've also got these strange things coming out of its back and seemingly no head. It's really bizarre, but to confirm it doesn't have a head, we're going to check out some screenshots from Jeff K. Boys. Now these are so crystal clear, and they reveal some really interesting stuff about the monster, namely that instead of a head, it's got this weird kind of hole, and by the way, this thing's referred to in the game files as the Summoner, so that gives you an idea of what it might be doing as well if we were to find it in a map too. And a key detail that was super easy to miss before is that there are actually bodies melded in and merged with the body of this monster. Like, if you look at its legs, you can really clearly see that there are sort of human forms that are trapped in there, just like, surprisingly, the original boss from World War II zombies called the Panzermörder. There are a few uncanny similarities here. One is the kind of melting together of lots of different bodies to create the form of this giant thing. Another is the fact that it doesn't actually have a head, it's just got this weird weird kind of hole thing. And the third is that our monster has all these bits sticking out, right? What if those are just untextured little bits of zombie, just like we saw with the Panzermorder, or they could be little brackets of metal and stuff holding it together? I don't think it actually is the Panzermorder. Like, I think that our monster is an elder god and it's an organic creature as opposed to something that has come from an experiment directly and been kind of pieced together by the Germans. But the comparisons are fascinating in my opinion nonetheless. I do, however, think that we can track down the identity of our monster a little better, and that's where the real meat and potatoes of this video comes in. Oh boy, I'm excited to share this one with you guys. If you head over to the crash site on the map, you might notice a strange message scrawled onto the wing of the plane. The message says Chernobog's wrath is coming, and it's something that so far hasn't made any sense with anything else that we've seen in Die Maschine. However, if we learn just a little bit about what Chernobog is, I believe we can relate that back directly to the big hulking black mass of a monster stood in front of us in all these clips. Just gonna take a second here to let your brain reset, because I know this is a lot of information. Okay, let's go. Chernobog is the god of bad fate and is worshipped by Western Slavic tribes such as those in Poland, which the map Die Maschine takes place in. We play the map in Morasko. The literary translation of Chernobog is Black God, and so it's no surprise that our monster, our elder god, appears to be entirely black in its texturing. It doesn't appear to have any color to it whatsoever. The first mention of Chernobog comes from the Chronica Slavorum, a Christian text written by the chronicler Helmold, who says that as part of the cult of the Slavs, they would curse the name of two gods, in fact. One being bad and the bringer of bad fate, Chernobog, and the other the god of good fortune being his brother, Belobog, or Bielobog. Helmold also referred to this black god, Chernobog, as Diabol, the devil. And this is where the story gets a little confusing from a historical point of view. You see, Helmold and lots of historical sources after him all talked about Chernobog with this Christian viewpoint because that's how they understood the world. If you're a Christian living in 1150 or the year 1200 and you hear about this new god of bad fate, it's quite likely that you're going to apply what you know about your devil in your religion to what their devil seems to be from your outsider point of view in their religion. The Christian religion has also only got one god. It's monotheistic, and as such, if you end up with a load of Christian scholars writing about other religions that are in their eyes worshipping false idols, they're probably going to take a pretty poor view on it all. And so the point I'm getting to here is that the original Christian kind of bias of a lot of those original historical sources means that today a lot of people give a Christian kind of form to Chernobog, and he ends up basically just looking like the devil. But in actuality, it's much more likely that for the Slavs, he would have looked like something else altogether. This also affects the way that we talk about him as bad. It's very easy to say that he's bad and that Bielobog is good, but in actuality, death is a necessary part of life. And so when we consider Slavic perspective and read that Chernobog presides over the underworld and spirits of the dead, for instance, which sounds very much related to zombies, which is a good link here, we shouldn't automatically let ourselves think, okay, he's evil and we've got to destroy him sort of thing. It's like saying the night sky is bad compared to the day. It's sort of not. It's almost essential, and it is needed for the day to exist in the first place. It's just different. And I think that's a really important and key feature here of the Slavic perspective that is lost a little when the Christians were describing it in the 1150s and 1200s. One modern viewpoint from Neil Gaiman is, I think, especially pertinent to this video. His description of Chernobog features him wielding a hammer at all times, and I think it's really fascinating that a hammer was seen as such an important feature of this god, because our scary monster in Die Maschine appears to have a club for an arm. It's not a detachable hammer, but rather one that is permanently grafted to its body. It's always there, ready to be used at a moment's notice. And it's so interesting that this modern viewpoint of the god had a hammer, and now we have this massive club on our version of it. Like, that seems like some pretty cool overlap. There's more overlap too, coming from a chronicler called Thomas Kantzau in the 1500s, who stated that faithless people before the German Empire would worship Chernobog and actually sacrifice people to him, believing there was no better way of assuaging that god than with human blood. And he states that their viewpoint on this was completely right, because Chernobog seeks nothing other than the death of the body and soul of man. Is it possible that the humans that were sacrificed to Chernobog are the same ones that we're seeing merged into its legs and arms? Do you think that we are seeing a representation of Chernobog itself here? Or is this just one of Chernobog's minions? The fact that Chernobog is mentioned directly in the game means that it's involved no matter what. You can't argue with that, but the exact way that it's involved is still a mystery. It might be that this is just Chernobog in the flesh, or for all we know, Chernobog could be the announcer that we hear in D Machine and that we haven't yet been able to ID. I've done a whole video about the potential of that announcer being Nikolai, and I'll have that on screen right now so you can click through to that and give it a watch right after this video. But there is also a possibility that we're no longer fighting against a human controller of the Dark Ether, and now it is simply a god itself. There are also references in the game files to a giant boss, and so regardless of what happens and what the true identity of this monster is, we are going to be fighting some kind of giant creature, and it would make perfect sense for this to be the creature, and it would make perfect sense as well if it was either Chernobog or Chernobog's minions, like I just said. I mean, Chernobog's wrath is coming, we just don't know in what form yet. So guys, make sure you subscribe to my channel for updates for when we're gonna fight this bad boy in person. That's all from me for now though, thanks for watching, bye for now.